Hello, this video is about the edTPA Special Education Planning Commentary. I am Muriel Rand from New Jersey City University. An overview of the planning commentary. First, you're going to download the Word template. You are going to then type right in it in between the brackets. If you don't have Word on your computer and you're using Google Docs, then upload it to Google Docs and use their Word editor. Don't convert it to a Google document, just use their Word editor. You're going to answer all of the questions with lots of details. And there are multiple parts to each question, so make sure you're answering all the parts to each question. In the end, your commentary should be 10 to 12 pages. I think 12 is better. They give you 12 pages, and I think they expect that level of detail. But if you can get it to be at least 10 pages, I think that will be okay. Let's go through each question, and I can give you suggestions for either what they're asking or how you can find support for that question. Question 1 is all about what you're teaching. So it's the alignment of the learning goal, the standard, and planned supports. So when edTPA uses the term planned supports, it refers to the learning environment. So it might be Google Classroom, the instructional strategies, the learning tasks. Those are all the things that you've put into your lesson plan, right? Your materials, any accommodations or modifications, assistive technology, prompts, or any kind of scaffolding that are deliberately selected and designed to facilitate learning of that particular knowledge and skills. So in this chart, you're going to put your learning goal at the top. This comes right from your lesson plans. And then the relevant academic, alternate, or early childhood standard. If you have multiple standards for your 3 lessons, put those in here. Otherwise, you can just put one standard in if your 3 lessons cover the same standard. And then for each lesson, just put in your lesson objective and your planned supports to address the learning goal. You don't have to put in, a whole page worth here, but put in a description of what your planned support will be. This chart shows 5 because you're allowed to do 3 to 5 lessons. If you're only doing 3 or 4 lessons, that's fine. Just put in the number you're doing. You must have at least 3. The next question is based on the learning goal and the focus learner's IEP goals. Respond to one of the prompts below. So there's 3 different sections there. You're only going to fill out one of those sections depending on the type of learning goal you're using. Most of you will be using the first one, and you're going to just explain what you're doing in that lesson. Question 1C is to list any special accommodations or modifications in the learning environment, instruction, or assessment required by the IEP and relevant to the learning goal. Again, you should already have this in your lesson plan. You can just copy it over here. This must align with the IEP requirements in your context for learning form. And you can explain that in your lesson plan. It's kind of brief, but you can go into more explanation here. Remember, they're giving you 12 pages to write this. These accommodations or modifications must align with the requirements in your context for learning form. The next part is 1D, and you're going to explain how the lesson objectives, learning tasks, materials, and plan supports are sequenced to move the focused learner toward achievement of the IEP goals, standards, and learning goal, and how they build connections between the focused learner's prior learning and experiences and new learning. So basically what you're writing here is, how do your lessons build on each other, and how do they build on what your learner already knows? So this is about the learning sequence. So what came before your lessons? How do your lessons build on each other? And you might even want to put in what you would do next. But basically, they want to know how your lessons build on each other and how they build on what your student already knows. Okay, now let's go to question 2. Question 2 is all about your focused learner. So the first part is the prior learning and experiences, including the prerequisite knowledge and skills related to the lesson objectives. And the second part is the social and emotional development. So here you're just going to describe your student. You don't describe your lesson plans here, just your students' prior experiences and learning related to the lessons. And of course, what is their social and emotional development like, and how might that affect their learning of this particular learning objective. So again, use as much detail as you can to describe your student. And then finally, part C is the personal, family, community, and cultural assets. And that means the focused learner's interests and strengths, their relevant lived experiences, their self-management skills, the family supports or resources, the cultural expectations, and any community supports or resources. Now, it's very important in this section that you describe assets and not deficits. If you just start describing the student's deficits, you'll get an automatic 1 on this, and you need at least a 3. So you want to make sure that you look at their assets. That means their strengths. What is your student's strengths? And again, you're going to describe your student, not your lesson plans. And make sure you're answering all 4 parts of this question. What are their personal strengths? What are their family strengths? What is the community strengths? And what are their cultural strengths? So answer all 4 parts of that question. And again, you're focusing on strengths, not deficits. 2D is just kind of an open-ended question. If relevant, you can add more information here about the focused learner that will influence your instructional planning. So anything that they haven't asked you about, this is your chance to put that in there. So any other information that you can give them about your student learner that you used in planning should go in this section. Okay, now let's go to question 3. This is supporting learning. And in question 3, this is where you're going to describe what's in your lesson plans. So again, in question 2, you describe your learner. In question 3, you're going to describe how you are supporting your learner. So you're going to use examples from your lesson plans. So the first 2 questions describe how the learning tasks, materials, and plan supports address your focused learner's needs and capitalize on his or her strengths and interests. And then explain how the learning tasks, materials, and plan supports will provide challenge to your focused learner. So there's 2 parts here. The first part, you're going to answer using the examples that you gave in question 2. So you just told us what your focused learner's needs and strengths and interests are. How did you use those in your lesson plans? Give specific examples from your lesson plans to answer question 3A. And again, you can use the same things that you put in question 2. Now they want to know, how did you use what you knew in question 2? How did you use those in your lesson plans? And for part B, give specific examples from what you know about your learner to show how what you planned will provide a challenge to them and how it will provide just the right challenge to them. Question 3C, you are going to justify your choices of learning tasks, materials, and plan supports based on 2 things: the focused learner's strengths and needs and principles of research and/or theory. So this section is a little bit more scholarly. So why did you choose those particular learning tasks and materials and plan supports? You've already talked about the learner's strengths and needs. So now, and you've talked about what choices you made. Now you're going to talk about why you made those choices. And you want to use principles of research and theory. You can go to Blackboard Task 1, and there is a link there. There's a little section there on strategies to help learners generalize. And there's a bunch of resources there, and those resources have research citations. So I would encourage you to look at those resources. And I also think this will help you, if you don't already know those strategies, it'll help you learn some strategies that you can use in your lesson plans. Question 3D is how throughout the learning segment you will help the focused learner to generalize, maintain, or self-manage the knowledge, skills, and plan supports related to the learning goal. And that's why I have that separate section on your lesson plan where you described that. So hopefully if you did a good enough job describing that in your lesson plans, you can elaborate on that here. If you don't feel like that's strong enough in your lesson plans, go to, again, Blackboard Task 1. I put a picture here. This is what it looks like. There's a link in there that says strategies to help learners generalize, maintain, or self-manage. What I put in there are links from the IRIS Training Center for Special Education Teachers. If you've never been to their website before, it's fantastic. And they have all of these training modules that are very practical and very helpful. The first two links are training modules. The next two links are actual strategies. One is the self-regulated strategy development, and the other one is strategic instruction model. And you could use either one of those or some of the information in the first two modules for this section of your commentary. You might need to go back and add this to your lesson plan. If you don't feel that's strong enough in your lesson plan, you can do that. Now, question 4 is completely about the expressive and receptive communication skills. So in part A, you're going to describe the communication skill you are teaching in your lesson. So, just give a reasonable description of what it is. This doesn't have to be a lot, but it should be a clear description of what the communication skill is that is in your lessons and how it relates to your lesson. And then this is how you're going to explain how you plan to support the focused learner's use of the communication skill. So here you're going to, there's actually 3 parts to this question. First, you're going to describe the skill. And then second, you're going to describe the supports you planned for this skill and give an example of that. And the supports, they have some things, they have some suggested things here, such as modeling, guided practice, graphic organizers, dictionaries, spell check, accommodations, assistive technology. Think about what your learner needs. Again, this might relate to the generalization piece that we did in the last question, because you're going to need to describe how the supports help the learner acquire, maintain, and generalize the skill. So you need some depth here. You need to really think about this in a little more depth and give a lot of support for why you are using those particular strategies. And then question 5 is about monitoring learning or assessments. So you're going to explain how the assessments and the daily assessment record, including baseline data, will provide evidence of the focused learner's progress towards the learning goal through the lesson objectives, and the level of support and challenge appropriate for the focused learner's needs. So in other words, you're going to describe your baseline, your informal and formal assessments, and how they relate to the objectives, and then how they give and then give examples of how they are appropriate for your learner. Like, how are they the right level of support? What level of support are they going to get? And how do you know that that challenge is appropriate? So presumably you're going to know that through your baseline data, right? So we're collecting data so that we can see exactly what level of support your learner will need. And again, if you need help in how you're going to involve the focused learner in monitoring his or her own learning progress, go back to that section on Blackboard. There's also strategies there, but you should have at least one way that the focused learner is monitoring his or her own learning progress. I would recommend that if you have some kind of a checklist or a rubric that you're using, that you give that to the student as well, and the student can monitor their own learning, but you need some evidence of that. So in summary, answer all parts of each question and give lots of details and examples. If you get to the end and you only have, let's say, 5 or 6 pages, it means you didn't give enough details or enough examples. You need more depth. And by all means, go back and change your lesson plans if you want to change anything. If by going through this commentary you think, oh, that section of my lesson plans was a little weak, I'm going to go back and add to that, by all means do that. That's how this process is designed, so that as you write your commentary, it gets you to learn more about the process of lesson planning, and it helps you to think more like a master teacher. So I think if you follow these guidelines and you work through the whole thing, I think that you're going to be very successful. And I also think this will help make you a more thoughtful teacher in the future.